lot of Americans are concerned.
So what we were able to do is to go out to an online auction site and buy 2 machines. Less than $100 is the cost of entry into your exploitation and vulnerability research. So this is what the machines look like when we booted them up. They're fully assembled. So now what we'll start to do is dissect them and see what we can find out as far as exploitation vectors. So I've only had access to this for a few minutes. I mean, literally a few minutes. And I can already see the threat landscape of this machine. Now, what's disturbing about that is that if this machine was to be booted up before the election day, someone could insert an administrator card and then pre-populate some votes. We see down here, this machine's actually done 1,434 votes from what we can tell. So with this, it's just kind of disturbing that someone could change the date to either close the precinct a few hours early or maybe pre-populate with some votes. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here that is worrisome, and I'm pretty confident that with the amount of information this machine gives up, then we could develop a exploit into this, given how wide the vectors are and the landscape. So the first thing I would do is have a plan pre-formulated, and since the election data is housed on a glorified thumb drive, type thing, I would look at manipulating it that way. So it would be a simple, I walk up, I have my key for this, I pop something out, I put something in. That would be the vector. So the one thing that I am happy about is that this machine was for sale online. So hopefully this precinct has updated their machines. However, this same machine is probably one that's being used in one of 9,000 other precincts around the US.
We're loving this one, but most people probably wouldn't.
A room full of hackers, all trying to hack into voting machines.
You can possibly make it accept a fake card or accept any card, so you could add your own votes.
These are supposed to be the latest machines. They're still used in elections, and they're running ancient software. I think that, if somebody wanted to, it would be pretty easy to fake an election.
Less than a couple hours with access, and they're already figuring out ways to break in and play pranks. But it gets more serious.
So you could leave the security key into it and still inject.
I feel like I'm the only one here that hasn't found a vulnerability. It's not what you think. They've all been invited here to demonstrate just how vulnerable the tech we rely on for our elections can be. The experiment is the brainchild of Jake Braun. He's a former security advisor for the Obama administration.
With everything that happened in 16, what we're trying to do is get this industry to mature from a cybersecurity perspective, so you don't have folks saying what they are now, which is things like machines are unhackable or databases are air-gapped and can't be changed.
It's not clear if any actual machines were infiltrated in the 2016 election, and no one has suggested any physical votes were changed. But intelligence officials agreed that Russia was able to meddle with other election-related systems. This inspired Braun and the organizers of this year's DEF CON hacking conference to collect over 30 pieces of voting-related equipment, including voting machines and a mock elections office, and tell a group of hackers to try any means necessary to break into and reverse engineer them. And it didn't take long. Several were compromised within the first hour and a half.
So if you're a voter in America, we're likely hacking a machine that you vote on. There's a few dozen of these machines and also electronic poll books. In some states, people check in on an electronic device as opposed to a paper book.
How you cast your vote varies from district to district. Some places use this machine, some places use that one. Some counties only vote on paper ballots, but almost all of these machines are still in use somewhere in the United States. Some of the hacks might not work if your district has updated the software on the machines, although many don't.
We can go in and hack this lock within 10 seconds. You gain access to the operating system. We could actually remove this and clone this particular USB. We could go back and start looking at and reverse engineering what's on this image and determining the various ways that we can impact this particular operating system.
No one will believe you until...
You guys, no one will believe you?
If they see XP, they're very happy.
Hey, good Lord. Did he just say good Lord? I like it every time it reboots to Windows XP, you hear people groaning behind us. The machines you use to cast your vote aren't the only point of entry for attackers. Other election-related systems, like campaign networks and registration databases, are also at risk.
The vulnerabilities at the voting machine level are very localized, and what we're trying to simulate out here is the entire back-end network.
There's a lot of mischief these guys can do without ever actually having to physically get access to a machine. If they were just to go in and mess up the voter file, you could have millions of people showing up at the wrong precinct or showing up at the right precinct, but the name's wrong in the poll book, and then all of a sudden, now they don't know where they need to go.
Intelligence officials have stated that Russia was able to influence the election without the need to penetrate actual voting machines by breaching DNC computers, accessing staffer emails and opposition research. The Department of Homeland Security also found that they targeted election-related systems in as many as 21 states.
If you wanted to go in and specifically manipulate vote counts on every single machine in America, that'd be really hard to do.
Right.
But you don't need to do that to have an impact on the election in 18 either. You don't only have to flip a couple Senate seats to have an impact on U.S. Congress.
If it can be done, there's a chance it's already being done.
If a nation state, a criminal organization, if they would start doing this, they would have stolen databases, they would have stolen machines, they would have manuals, they would have studied.
Right.
They have started with nothing a few hours ago. The uphill battle they have fought to get where they are is incomprehensibly more difficult than what real criminal would need to do.
Do you think that nation states, real criminals, already have an idea of some of the vulnerabilities that are being discovered today?
Absolutely. It's all documented. It's in public documents.
Right.
It's not hiding anywhere. You can go actually to Secretary of State websites and download and learn hundreds and hundreds of vulnerabilities.
By the end of the weekend, all of the available machines had been hacked successfully, including an electronic poll book system that still contained the personal data of over 650,000 Tennessee voters in Shelby County, information that hadn't been properly wiped before the machines were resold. The county's administrator of elections told CNN Tech that they are looking into the incident, and that as far as they're aware, the information exposed on the poll book is already publicly available through a request to the Board of Elections. When reached for comment, manufacturer Election Systems and Software told CNN Tech, unrestricted access to a voting unit in an uncontrolled environment is not a legitimate test. We've extended an invitation to the organizers of DEF CON, inviting them to visit our home office, meet our developers, and engage in a collaborative discussion regarding voting system security. To date, we have not received a response. Dominion Voting Systems did not respond to our request for comment. The plan is to eventually present the event's findings to Congress.
What the election industry needs to do is start working together with our national security agencies to share threat information, understand when the bad guys get in, and then get them out when they do. If we don't get our act together quickly, this could be one of the biggest threats to American democracy in our history.
Do you believe that right now we are in a position where the 2020 election will be hacked?
Oh, without question. I mean, the 2020 election will be hacked no matter what we do, even if we're as more successful than I even think we could be in securing our elections. The question is, will we be able to identify the attacks before they can have an impact on the election through things like audits of vote counts? And can we get the bad guys out before they can do something bad?
They called it backwards. It was simply backwards.
The South Jersey voting machine incident makes waves.
It was 2011, and Cynthia Zirkle and her husband Ernie were running in a local election in their hometown of Fairton, New Jersey.
Was this a big deal here?
It was. It was both a big deal, but people said, we don't trust the system. And that was sad, very sad.
How did you know you would win this election?
Because I knew 33 of the people that voted for us, and we lost 33-10. And I knew that that wasn't the case.
The results had been switched with those of their opponents.
We started calling people that we thought we knew voted for us because it was just in this district of this township, and we know everybody in this district.
Because people voted on electronic voting machines that leave no paper trail, there was no way to recount the votes.
Do you blame the electronic voting machine?
No, I blame people. And unfortunately, I think that no matter what system you come up with, can be rigged.
The FBI investigating accusations Vladimir Putin and the Russians were trying to sway the election.
The system, folks, is rigged. It's a rigged, disgusting, dirty system.
The FBI says states should be on guard to protect against computer attacks that could jeopardize the integrity of their elections.
This November, millions of Americans will be voting on electronic voting machines. In 5 states, people will be casting their ballots exclusively on touch screens that leave no paper trail, as well as in individual counties in several other states.
When you have an electronic voting machine with no paper ballot, then you're completely relying on the software in the voting machine to tell you who won. And software is easily replaced in a computer, so somebody can replace it with fraudulent software that lies about who won. Now I'm going to unscrew this sheet metal panel.
That's computer scientist Andrew Appel. He knows what he's talking about because he's actually hacked the voting machines himself.
And you see, you don't have to be a computer expert to actually hack the voting machine. So I remove it simply by prying it loose from its socket with a screwdriver. If it's a really close election, then one swing state will make the difference.
In the battleground state of Pennsylvania, one of the largest counties is using the very same machine that Dr. Appel hacked.
If someone has access to a room full of machines and one computer scientist is able to change a memory chip in 7 minutes, is it possible that a room full of machines could be compromised?
Honestly, I don't know how you could do it in 7 minutes. You could maybe, once the panels were off, it may not take that long. In our case, there would be some evidence of tampering that the judge of election would obviously notice that next day.
These machines are put into a school, they're in a warehouse. Is it secure?
Each polling location is supposed to have a secure locked room in which the machine is placed. The machines themselves have a lock on them. And then we have, and I'm not going to explain it, but we do have also an additional tamper-evident safeguard.
Election officials point out that Dr. Appel's hacking methods require being able to physically access the machines. So we went to see how hard that would actually be in Mercer County, New Jersey.
This is the warehouse. We have 600 machines in here, and we have several cameras throughout. I believe there's 8 cameras throughout the building.
Could someone get in here and switch the memory chips at night without you knowing about it?
No, because the alarm would go off, the cameras would come on and record them coming in, and by the time they even tried to get into a machine, the police department would be here.
So you actually programmed this to say, this button's for Hillary Clinton, this button's going to be for Trump?
No, that's done by Dominion.
Dominion is the company behind the machines. We reached out to them, but they didn't respond to our request for comment.
Would you prefer that this machine had a paper ballot attached to it?
I think it'd be great if voters could walk out with a piece of paper that said your votes were recorded for these candidates. And if we had the funding to make that available to voters, that would be a great thing.
The federal government actually gave states lots of funding, hundreds of millions of dollars, to improve their voting systems after the 2000 Bush-Gore election disaster in Florida. To try and prevent future problems, states moved away from paper ballots to electronic voting machines. But there was one big issue with the new machines.
It didn't have a paper trail. There was no way to verify how they voted.
Inside this Florida warehouse, there are hundreds of electronic voting machines that won't be used by the general public in November.
Do you understand why voters don't trust these things?
They said that they wanted a paper trail. They wanted to be able to see where their votes, how their votes were captured. And you can't see that on here.
So Florida purchased new machines again for the 2008 election, spending millions of dollars to give voters a verifiable paper trail.
So these are the optical
These are
machines.
optical scan machines. When a person votes on these machines, they'll put in the paper ballot. If there's a big discrepancy, we can go into that bin, pull out the paper, check the paper again.
So why are voters in more than a dozen states still voting on paperless machines?
We don't have a national process for voting. Maybe we should.
We should be able to run elections not worrying about can we trust the results if the computers aren't hacked, but can we trust the results even if the computers might be hacked? And the kind of paper trails available through optical scan ballots give us that assurance. What's important is get more and more of the states into technologies that are secure against hacking.
Despite concerns, election officials say they're ready for November.
We're very confident that we have taken every step possible to make these machines secure. I cannot tell you that any system is 100% secure. Even paper ballots, people make mistakes with the tabulation of them. But I'm comfortable that we have taken every step possible to make this particular machine secure.
As for the Zirkles, they ended up winning their election after a judge ordered a new vote. Still, they have little faith in our electoral process.
When you have candidates that have enormous amounts of money at their disposal, elections can be bought, and they can be bought at the local level in enough places that it will make a difference. And that's my biggest fear.
Can you trust a voting machine that's electronic with no paper trail?
No. And you can't trust the people running that kind of a system.